Welcome to Functional Philosophy, the show in which I, Charles II, explain and apply Ayn Rand's philosophy, objectivism. If you'd like to ask me a question on objectivism or its application, just go to charles2.com/contact. And my last name is spelled T as in tango, E as in echo, and W as in whiskey. As you are aware, if you listened to last week's episode, the microphone I usually use to record episodes is not functioning properly. My replacement microphone should arrive in time for me to record next week's episode with it, but for the time being, I am recording on my phone, as I did in the good old days. So, first question. I wanted to know your take on the rape scene in the Fountainhead. My opinion was that Dominique resisted Roark, but didn't call for help because of her inner conflict. She hated Roark and herself for desiring him because of her malevolent view of the world. But then later in the story she tells Wynand that Roark raped her and emphasized that he didn't ask for consent. That didn't make a lot of sense to me when I read it. Could you explain? Was this just Ayn Rand taking artistic liberties? Well, I don't know how that would explain it. You take artistic liberties to serve a specific purpose. So without knowing what that was, I don't see how just saying it was artistic license explains anything. Now, you also say that she hated Roark and herself for desiring him. I wouldn't say she hated Roark or herself, but she was conflicted. She had strong values, but didn't think they were achievable in this world, and so consciously suppressed her desires and refused to act in pursuit of her values. Really, she didn't have values, because you have to pursue something in order for it to actually be a value to you, so you could say she gave up her values because she didn't think they were achievable in the world. And so her desire for Roark conflicted with her conscious relinquishing of value pursuit. So yes, I think that played into her relationship with Roark and the rape. Now, if you want to know what I thought of the rape scene itself, well, she clearly wanted Roark to come to her, and in fact, part of the reason she gets angry at him is because she sent that message, and Roark deliberately postpones coming to her, which makes her angry. So in that sense, this isn't a knife in an alleyway rape. It's a symbolic rape. She had clearly communicated that she wanted him to come to her. So that's what I think about the rape scene in itself. I don't think that's controversial or difficult to understand. Not controversial among basically rational people anyway. But now for your question about Wynand and how Dominique characterizes what happened to him. Ayn Rand has Dominique emphasize that it was non-consensual, that it was a rape, because that serves the purpose of the scene. The purpose of that scene is to show Wynand taking it. A major theme in the Fountainhead is the relationship of virtuous people to vicious people, and how other people's viciousness hurts or doesn't hurt the virtuous. You have the characterization of Roark's pain only going down so far. You have Roark saying, "But I don't think of you." Roark is characterized by a certain immunity to other people's vices, to the effects of other people's vices. Whereas Wynand and Dominique can't take it. So the point of the scene is to show that Wynand is taking it. And so Ayn Rand has Dominique stress anything that would make it more painful to Wynand. Because the more painful the thing Wynand experiences, the more dramatic a demonstration of his immunity it is. After Dominique emphasizes that Roark didn't ask for consent, Wynand just says, "Okay, I just wanted to know," or something like that. And Dominique gets upset and says, "If you can take it like that, you had no right to become the power luster you became." Because he became a power seeker in order to deal with other people's evil. Roark didn't become one because he can take it. And so Dominique is saying, if you can be like Roark, then it was wrong for you to have become the Wynand that you became. So anyway, that's the only reason she stresses that it was non-consensual, because stressing that it was a rape makes it more painful, and thus more dramatically demonstrates his immunity to pain. Next question. When I need to park on the street in my city, I don't pay the city what it's asking for, be that paying for a parking meter or the purchase of a parking pass. I am able to do so without getting parking tickets. Do you regard this as theft? If so, is this theft okay because I'm stealing from the city who stole the wealth for the creation and upkeep of the roads I'm parking on? If it makes a difference, I'm 16 and have yet to pay taxes, so I haven't personally been stolen from. I've heard you call similar behavior a hatred/disregard for the nature of reality in the past. If the same applies to my behavior, does this reflect a corrupted sense of life on my part? Okay, there are a few things to respond to here. First, sense of life is a deeply ingrained personal, emotional issue. I couldn't possibly infer somebody's sense of life from whether they evade paying for parking. Second, as for stealing, I don't say it's based on a hatred of reality, necessarily. It's a proof of concept for people. People want to prove the efficacy of evasion to themselves. If somebody came up and gave these thieves the item they had stolen for free, they wouldn't get that excited. But they get very excited when they get away with stealing it. Why? It's because it's the theft, the act of theft, that is important to them, not what they're stealing. I'm not saying they're not going to enjoy what they're stealing in some limited, out-of-context way. If they steal a bag of candy, they may still enjoy the taste of the candy, but the reason they're doing it is not to get X without having to pay for it because of the value of X to them. It's to feel that they don't have to pay for things in principle. That's why people steal, and that's why people get far more excited about having gotten away with theft than they would if somebody just gave them the item they stole for free and told them they didn't have to steal it. So that's for the motivation of theft. Now, do I regard what you're doing as the same thing? No. I advocate following even bad laws in a basically free society, assuming those laws are not essentially destructive to your life and happiness. If marijuana is illegal in an otherwise basically free society, I don't think you should smoke marijuana unless you have some serious pain that only marijuana can alleviate. Then I would say it's okay. Now, that obviously does not apply today because we are nowhere close to a free society. And so you are theoretically morally justified in skirting whatever government fees you can. I'm not advocating you don't pay government fees. Obviously, I couldn't do that. That would be a violation of the law to advocate that you break the law. So I'm just saying theoretically, morally, you are justified in doing so. And if you were to, you would be doing me a personal favor because I have been ripped off by parking fees many times. I have a bad history with this in particular. I have been ticketed when I was clearly following the rules, and so I have it out for government-controlled parking. Oh, also you say you haven't been stolen from because you're 16 and haven't paid taxes yet. Well, you still exist in a society that is made far worse because of the government's intervention. There are all kinds of people you could have dealt with on terms other than you currently can if the government hadn't intervened. It is still violating your rights even if it hasn't made you specifically pay taxes yet. It's changed the nature of your parents' or legal guardians' situation, and it's changed the situation of everyone you deal with. So it doesn't have to be that they concretely stole from you for you to morally blame them. Suppose the government nationalizes all businesses, and then you have breadlines. Would you say, well, they didn't take from me. I didn't have a business, so they're not violating my rights? That's ridiculous. You have a right to deal with other free people. So even if they didn't nationalize your business, they're violating your right to deal with other people on terms of freedom. Next question. From an objectivist point of view, what speech is not protected as free speech? I assume, like most people, myself included, you recognize calls to violence against an individual as beyond the realm of free speech. But what do you think about slander? Is it moral for you to use force against me to prevent me from calling you a child rapist? If so, what about if I call you a communist? If only the first slanderous statement should be illegal, what exactly makes that one worse? Well, you have a false premise here, which is that something that is worse should be more punishable, but that is not true. There are certain crimes that the government cannot legitimately punish because they are either too petty and numerous or impossible to prove. So you can't have this rationalistic idea, if something's wrong, it should be punishable. Legally punishable. Well, that's simply not how reality works in fact. Yes, slander should be illegal, but the lie about you must be demonstrably, concretely false and have caused you economic harm. That is the only way to make this issue objective. Now, this is a great opportunity for me to explain something that many people don't understand, including many objectivists. Fraud is a form of force. And that includes petty things like lying to your friend about when you're going to meet him at the movie theater. Suppose you're annoyed at your friend and you tell him that you're going to meet him at the movies at 7 and then you deliberately don't show up. And you do that to waste his time. That was intentional. That is a violation of his rights. But it is petty and unprovable. And that is why the legal system shouldn't deal with it. Not because it isn't a violation of his rights. You have circumvented his will through fraud and wasted his time. But you can't rationalistically make it an out-of-context principle that the government should punish every violation of rights no matter what. Well, sometimes the government can't prove that rights were violated. Or sometimes it's so petty that it would overwhelm the government with cases if it were to take issues of that petty nature seriously. And that's the issue here. But if you say, well, that's not a violation of rights, well, then you're going to be a libertarian who says that nothing is a violation of rights unless you punch somebody in the face. So what if I lie to somebody? That's whatever. It's not a dramatic, violent, concrete, so therefore it's not force. No, that is wrong. The reason that you don't prosecute somebody for lying to you about when he was going to meet you at the movies is not because it isn't a form of fraud, but because it's unprovable and sufficiently petty. Now, this principle that the government can't punish every violation of rights is relevant here. If someone calls you a child rapist, that is a concrete claim, and if you can show that people are boycotting you, not patronizing your hardware store or restaurant or business, whatever it is, because your name has been slandered, then you should be able to sue that person, and he should be liable. Now, if somebody calls you a communist, that's a different story. That is an abstract issue, assuming he's not calling you a member of the Communist Party, which is a concrete. If he is just calling you a communist in theory, that is a different issue. I've had libertarians compare me to communists and Marxists, because as an objectivist, I believe in what you might call an intellectual theory of the origin of property. And so I've had libertarians say, oh, you're just like a Marxist. You think it's intellect, Marxists think it's labor, so you're really similar. Now, ignore how ridiculously stupid that is. That is an abstract claim. I should not be able to sue somebody for saying that, even though there is a truth of the matter, and that is more profoundly false than many concretely, demonstrably false things you could say about me. Still, I shouldn't be able to sue because the government can't get involved in abstract philosophy. It has to restrict itself to the concrete, or else there will be no freedom of thought anymore. And the government can't prove that somebody did this maliciously. Now, there is a fact of the matter. This person could be deliberately lying, knowing that I'm nothing like a Marxist. But there's no way you can prove that beyond a shadow of a doubt in a courtroom. I suppose the easiest way to simplify this is just to say that for something to be slander, it has to be intentional. That's part of the standard in the law. You have to prove malicious intent, and that's legitimate. You can't criminalize thinking wrong thoughts or coming to wrong conclusions. And so that is why abstract claims can't be criminalized, because it's impossible once you get into the realm of theory and abstraction to prove malicious intent. There are a million ways somebody could have just made a mistake. It is only with concretes that you even have a chance of showing, okay, this was malicious. Here is a concrete fact that we know this person knew, and he's saying the opposite. But when you get into something with multiple steps and what communism is and concept formation and whether somebody fits under this concept, that is just impossible. You cannot prove that somebody did that maliciously. So that is why slander applies only to concrete claims. It'd be better if you used a different example, because child rape is pretty horrible. So something less bad than that, let's say. Let's say you accuse somebody of cheating on his wife versus you call him a nihilist. Well, being a nihilist is worse than just cheating on your wife, but it's also abstract. So you can't have this standard that if something is worse, it should be punishable to a greater degree by the government. That's not how it works. You are taking a rationalistic standard and trying to force reality to work the way you want it to. You want the legal system to work like Zeus up in the clouds, balancing the books, handing out punishments and rewards, but that's not how it works. Now, it does work like that metaphysically. Nobody gets away with immorality, but legally, it can't work like that, because we are human beings and we have to operate according to certain objective standards. And we are not omniscient. If you'd like to keep up with everything I do, just go to charles2.com. If you'd like to enable me to do more, just go to patreon.com/charles2 and become a supporter. Thanks for listening.